Hello, Jerry. Today I am talking to Geri Gallas, who is the founder, owner, creator of Open Book Chocolate. And Geri is actually based in Gaithersburg, Bethesda, Maryland. So not a Hudson Valley girl yet, but maybe we can lure her. But today, as we're talking, it's the 1st of October. And I know people are starting to think about holiday seasons, gifts. This is like cozy season when you want to be inside under your blanket with a book. And you pretty much have combined all the things that I love: chocolate, books, reading, goodies. So I wanted to talk about open book chocolates and have you tell us your story. So we didn't talk about this before we started recording, but we have a mutual friend, Raven Lee.
Oh,
And
oh,
so,
okay.
yeah, so in January 2023, she sent me a whole package. I think it was one of each bar that you had at the time. And they are so gorgeous. I would love to show one, but they're long gone.
I
they're
have I have some of them here, so I can hold them up. Like, here's some of our.
Oh, yeah. So you have some new flavors since I got my package from Raven. So we'll talk about the new flavors, but one of the ones that I had in that package was a little princess, which is masala chai in milk chocolate. That is like so my palate, like those kind of warming spices and milk chocolate, and so good. So tell us your story. How did open book chocolates get started?
Yeah, well, I've always been a super creative person. As long as I can remember, I've been writing and illustrating my own like characters and stories and comic books. So I really kind of came from that world of um, writing and illustrating graphic novels, but it's kind of a difficult industry, kind of an unpleasant industry, and very difficult for women and like a lot of like misogyny and sexism in that industry, and it really doesn't make much money. So I really wanted to refocus my efforts and still be creative, but also be able to earn a living. And I just have always loved literature. I've always loved reading. And just combining that with like who doesn't love chocolate? And just also I've always loved independent bookstores, and a lot of the indie bookstores I've noticed sell chocolate bars. So
Yes.
it's just like what better place to have
Yeah.
book themed chocolate bars than an
Yes.
indie bookstore.
You are speaking my language because indie bookstores are my very most favorite thing. And I was already thinking about some of the independent bookstores here in the Hudson Valley that I love and asking them if they could carry these. Um, and also, so I love it as a holiday gift. It's so fun. And if you're packaging a gift and you get a book lover some books and maybe a blanket and a little thing of tea, and then you could garnish it with a couple of open book chocolate bars, I think that would be such a good gift for a reader. I love that. So are you in a lot of stores in your area?
A couple here. It's funny. I have bookstores all over the US in like the
Nice.
most in places I would have never expected. Like we have Zenith Bookstore in Duluth, and like, which I'm like, really? But they're a very good customer. Or we have like Beacon Hill Books in Boston, the
Mm,
Ripped Bodice in Brooklyn. We have
nice.
some really wonderful customers like all over the country. So we're in a lot of independent bookstores all over.
That's so cool. Are you at Charm City Books in Baltimore?
I've tried, I haven't really had any luck with Baltimore, and I
Mm.
haven't really had any luck with DC. It's
Oh.
kind of funny. Like I don't know what it is, but I keep trying and then it doesn't seem to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So
Well, I'm going to
maybe.
introduce you to a friend of Literary Hudson Valley. His name is Candace Rivera, and she has a shop in Warwick, New York, which is in
Okay.
Orange County. And she just recently celebrated her first anniversary of owning her bookshop. And I think she has the vision to understand that chocolate would be an awesome addition. And I would love to have these available in the Hudson
Sure.
Valley for sure.
That would
So,
be great.
so on the packaging, did you do all the sketches as well?
I didn't do the illustrations.
Okay.
However, I do all the graphic design for the packaging.
Oh, the packaging
Um,
is so great. It has lines from the book and it's got these beautiful vintage looking illustrations and it's really feels very luxurious before you even get to the chocolate.
yes, and we've been kind of developing the packaging over the years and improving it. And I try to find illustrations or paintings in the public domain to use that are possibly from the first edition or an original printing of that novel,
Mm-hmm.
or something like from a time period
Mm-hmm.
close to the book,
Yeah.
something related to the book. Like for instance, our Dorian Gray bar, I used a Aubrey Beardsley illustration. Aubrey Beardsley was friends with Oscar Wilde, so it was the perfect
That is
artist
so
to use.
cool. And what's the flavor of Dorian Gray?
That one is strawberries and juniper berries and dark chocolate.
So
It
good.
has kind of like the juniper berries aren't overpowering, but it has a more savory flavor to
Mm-hmm.
that, which is a great contrast with the sweet chocolate.
Yes. I love a savory, salty, even spicy kind of chocolate. So,
Yes.
aside from the packaging being amazing and this being so appealing to book people, where do you come up with the inspiration for your flavors? And how did you learn how to do chocolate? Because chocolate is difficult. You've got to temper it. You have to know what you're doing. You can't just melt some chocolate chips and pour them into
Yeah.
a mold.
Mhm. So, the flavors, I usually have read the books or I reread the books, and usually sometimes it's very easy. It's something that a flavor or food that's mentioned directly in the novel. Sometimes I have to figure out some flavor or food that reflects the time period, the place the setting, or something that reflects the characters. For instance, Pride and Prejudice was a very difficult one to figure out,
Hmm.
but I realized that that one, Pride and Prejudice, is black currant and cinnamon and dark chocolate.
Hmm.
And currants were used in a lot of Regency period desserts. So that was appropriate for Pride and Prejudice. And then also I felt the cinnamon was kind of the spiciness of
Yes. And
Judith
currants are a little
Season.
sour. So you got a
Yeah,
little sour, a little
exactly.
spiciness. That's good.
But sometimes it's just so obvious, like Treasure Island was so obviously rum and coconut. It was just like, duh.
Yes. Yeah, I feel like a little princess was easy too. Like, yeah, it's gonna
Yeah,
be masala chai. That's the perfect flavor to go with this
yes,
story.
yes, exactly. So yeah, and then I work very closely with a chocolate factory called River Sea Chocolates in
Yeah.
Chantilly, Virginia. They're amazing. Everything is bean to bar, handmade. They import all their cacao. So it's a husband and wife who own it, and the husband is from Brazil, so they get a lot of the cacao from Brazil, and they even sometimes they try to work with this indigenous community in Brazil that they don't farm the cacao, they have wild grown cacao. So it's
Wow.
really, really unique flavors that like chocolate is kind of, the cacao is kind of like coffee beans, where based on where it's grown,
Hmm.
on certain flavors. So this is really unique and special chocolate. And so we love collaborating with River Sea. They're all into sustainability, eco-friendliness, all of that great stuff, fair trade. So paying, the farmers a fair wage. We care so much about that, those sorts of things, in addition to our love of books.
But it is guilt-free chocolate. That's
Yeah.
great. Do they also source the other ingredients for you, like for example, your juniper berries?
I usually it depends. We kind of split that. It depends on the flavor, but I usually try to source whatever extra ingredients we put into the bars.
Mm, very
So yeah.
cool. So, all right, you have some new flavors. So, I had not forgotten about open book chocolates because I think about chocolate in books all the time. But then I just recently saw that you have a couple of new flavors coming out. You just finished a Kickstarter campaign, but these will be available on your site. So, tell me your new flavors.
Yes, so I'll show the packaging. This is our Frankenstein bar, which is our newest flavor, and it is raspberries and Icelandic lava salt and dark chocolate. And the flavor comes from, well, the raspberry. So the creature, like when he's kind of abandoned by Frankenstein, has to like live on whatever he can find. So he finds like wild berries. So we kind of went with
Oh.
raspberries for that. And then the lava salt was actually because when Mary Shelley wrote Frankenstein, there was the year without a summer because there was I believe it was Indonesia, there was a volcanic eruption which caused Europe to be cold during the summer. And that's why Mary Shelley and Lord Byron and all of those people came together and wrote ghost stories or scary stories.
Mhm.
So the lava salt was just like the perfect ingredient to bring all of that together.
That is so cool and perfect. And for anybody who does not know, who's not as big of geeks as we are, how old was Mary Shelley when she did that?
Wasn't she was a teenager, I think. I
Yeah,
forget what
I think she
age.
was 19 when she was
19. Yeah,
writing Frankenstein. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And they always try to make it where like her husband wrote it. It's like, no, she wrote she wrote
Yeah.
it.
So that's awesome. What's the other new flavor that you have?
So the other one, I'll pull this one up. This is our jolabokaflod, which is Yule Book Flood, also with an Icelandic connection. So this is a tradition in Iceland where for Christmas Eve you gift each other books, and then you read the books late into the night while sipping hot chocolate. And this was kind of because of World War II. After World War II, it was kind of hard to find gifts, but there were a lot of books.
Oh.
So in Iceland, they were like, let's gift each other books.
I've
And
heard
so,
of the tradition. I
yeah,
had no idea how to say the word until you just
yes,
pronounced it, but I did
that's,
not know the origin of it. That's
yeah,
so great.
it's actually very funny because last year, every December for the past 3 years, we've done a Annapolis Chocolate Binge Festival.
Ooh.
And so last year we had a customer at Binge Festival that worked for the Icelandic embassy. And we were like, oh my God, please tell us, are we pronouncing this correctly? And she's like, yes, you're doing a good job. So
Nice.
yeah, jolabokaflod.
Jolabokaflod. What's the flavors in there?
That one is candied orange, cinnamon, and clove and dark chocolate.
That sounds so Yule tidy.
Yes,
That's
yes. And it
really
goes
yummy.
very well with our Christmas Carol chocolate bar, which is our other seasonal chocolate bar. That one is hazelnut pear and nutmeg and dark chocolate.
Yum. So what's next? So where do you come up with inspiration? You're just reading a book and you're like, ooh, I could make a candy bar out of this.
Yeah, well, I'm very careful to stay in the public domain because we
Hmm.
don't want to get sued. Of course,
Understandable.
we get a lot of people asking for a Harry Potter bar or like a Game of
Uh,
Thrones bar, and I'm like, it's not in the public domain. I mean, unless like, one of those authors came to us and requested us to make a chocolate bar and we had a
yeah.
contract. But we try to stay in the public domain, which is usually like the rule of thumb is like it's 100 years old or the authors died like 75 years ago, I think is the length of time. So we really, for instance, only recently were able to do The Great Gatsby because that finally entered the public domain a couple years
Uh,
ago. And so yeah, sometimes it's just like trying to figure out what classic literature connects with the most people and which classic novels we love the most. And I have some classic novels that I love, but I know no one else knows, so they wouldn't sell. So it's kind of like this fine balance. For instance, we used to have the Tale of Genji, which was a matcha in white chocolate, green tea matcha,
mhm,
which I loved, but it's very hard to make because the green tea, the powder gets stuck in all the machinery. It's very hard to clean off.
mm.
So our chocolate makers didn't want to make it anymore.
Understandable.
And I was kind of surprised that a lot of people have never, I mean, I'm very into Japanese culture,
Mm.
Japanese language and literature, and I studied abroad in Tokyo for a year in college.
Nice.
So I was kind of surprised that almost no one in the US has heard of the Tale of Genji, which is like the most famous piece of Japanese literature.
I had not, I will admit
Yeah,
that,
which
until
is
I saw the bar.
fine. But I want to reintroduce Japanese literature to our flavor lineup
Mhm.
eventually. And I was like, well, what is going to work for that? Because people are really not familiar with Japanese literature here. But I care about having diverse authors
Mhm.
in our chocolate flavors.
Which is
So
a little harder to do when everything is 100 years old.
exactly, exactly. So, for instance, it was important to me to have The Count of Monte Cristo because it's one of
Mhm.
my all-time favorite books, but also Dumas was biracial. So I was like, I really need to have him, as a representative of diversity.
Mhm.
But so yeah, so for the Japanese flavor, I was like, well, what about there's a very famous in Japan, a very famous novel called I Am a Cat. And I'm like, well, Americans love cats, so it
Yes,
doesn't
we
even
do.
matter if they've read the book or not. So that's kind of like an upcoming flavor we're thinking of doing.
Ah. But you could do a little cherry blossom to tie
Yes,
into Japan, and then maybe that would take off in the DC area because they do love their cherry
that's
blossoms.
true. Yes, that is true. Actually, my other idea was for it was because it takes place in the Meiji period, which is like the late 1800s, early 1900s, and when the West was kind of being introduced to Japan, I was thinking of curry in dark
Oh
chocolate
yeah.
because basically the British took curry from India and then introduced it to Japan.
Oh,
And
interesting.
and curry is very popular in Japan and is kind of that period, the Meiji period, I think of curry. So
I like
that's
that.
kind of the idea right now. We haven't made the bar yet, but that's the idea.
That's good. I would also eat chocolate with miso flavoring
So
as
that
well.
sounds good too.
That would be really
I'll
good.
have to think about that one. I'm not sure. Like one of the things about the flavors for the chocolate bars is that they can't have too much liquid in them.
Right.
So I don't know if miso would work or not. Maybe it would
Mhm.
have to be like a powdered miso. I'm not
Yeah.
sure.
Taste. Yeah. So we don't have the tail of Genji anymore right now. Do you have anything else that is white chocolate?
Yes, we have our one white chocolate, which is Sherlock Holmes. Let me see if
Oh
I can
yeah.
find that in my pile of bars here. So Sherlock Holmes is our white chocolate. It's so good. This is one of my favorite bars. It is Earl Grey tea and honey and white chocolate, and it
Yeah.
is one of our most popular flavors. Unfortunately, right now, there is a shortage of cacao butter, and so we're unable to make more Sherlock Holmes. So we have a very limited supply
Mm.
of it. But the cacao butter goes in all in the milk chocolate and the dark chocolate, but of course the most goes in a white chocolate.
Mhm.
So it's kind of like because of the scarcity is kind of we're in a position where we have to ration the
Mhm.
cacao butter so that we can still make all the other flavors. So the Sherlock Holmes is really special and it's like real white chocolate. I think a lot of people are used to Hershey's white chocolate, which is nothing like our white chocolate. And people are always shocked when we give them a sample of Sherlock Holmes and they're like, wow, I actually like this.
Mhm.
And I don't usually like white
Yeah.
chocolate, is what most people tell us.
Well,
So it's
the cacao butter and the Earl Grey are perfect together. I inhaled that bar and then I regretted it. I was like, I should have like had one square a day, but no,
no,
that was not in the
it
cards.
is hard to stop eating it, and it is like the perfect cup of tea in bar form.
Yeah, so good. So, okay, so if people are not near a store, well, so how can people find out if there is a store near them that carries open book chocolates?
Yeah. Yeah, we actually have on our website a section that says find us in stores, and it has a list of a number of the stores we're carried in, but we're adding, new stores almost every day at this point because of the holiday season.
Mhm.
The bookstores are getting their wholesale orders in right now.
Yeah.
So we're kind of going crazy, sending out like hundreds of bars at a time to these different stores, which is great.
Yeah.
Um, and
You
so
say
yeah,
we. How many people do you have on your team?
it's me and my mom.
Oh. Oh, good. I mean, I get that because all the podcast and the literary Hudson Valley and all the things, there's two of us.
Yeah, yeah.
So
It's
yeah,
but also everyone at River C, they're like always growing. It's like we're always like, oh no, are we gonna outgrow River C? Because they started out in when we first started working with them in a tiny one room, tiny little space, and now they're like taking over their building, like and
nice.
they're moving actually to an even bigger space, and they're getting like more and more machinery. They just bought, I believe, a machine that was cost as much as a Ferrari to help them make the chocolate faster. So
Wow.
it's like amazing watching them develop and grow, and
I
then
love
we're
that.
growing too at the same time, and we kind of help each other out, so
That's
it's really
super
great.
cool. And so if I don't have a store near me, can I order from your website? And is there any place that you're not shipping? Because some places are still hot. I don't know about shipping chocolate.
Yes, so we our online store should be open, and so that's openbookchocolates.com. And we send out all over the US. We do some international shipping, but we
Yeah.
have people email us so that we can calculate the shipping costs for them. So if you are international, like feel free to email us. And if like it does become easier to ship out the chocolate when it get cools off the weather, but we do still ship to like Texas, California, Florida, the states that kind of remain a little bit warmer. We do use ice packs and insulated packaging, so we really don't ever have a problem with chocolate melting.
Yeah. Well, Raven sent mine to me in Texas and they were
Oh,
completely fine.
wonderful.
It was January though, but that's okay because if we're talking about holiday gifts and shipping these for the holidays, then we're relatively safe in that time period
Yes.
anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, I will put links to everything in the description of the video, and I will look forward to eating much more chocolate on jolabokaflod.
Yes.
Did I do it? Did I do it
Yeah.
right? All right.
Good, yeah.
Thank you for chatting with us.
Thank you for having me.
Good luck with your chocolates this season.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.